Atlas of the Heart by BrenA Brown. Picture yourself as a kid again. You're living in a house that swings between extremes. One moment it's filled with warmth and laughter. The next it can flip to rage and hurt. The good times feel amazing, but fragile, like you're balanced on a tightrope. You know instinctively that one wrong word, one misplaced glance, or one sarcastic comment could send everything spiraling into chaos. As the oldest of four, you feel responsible for protecting your siblings. You become their guardian. But here's the thing. Even during the happy moments, you can't fully relax. You're always on duty, standing just outside the circle of joy, watching, waiting, scanning for the storm you sense could arrive at any second. And you can't talk to anyone about it. In your family, feelings are off limits. You don't discuss fears or problems. Everything is supposed to be fine. So when it's not fine, you start believing the problem must be you. And to make things even stranger, you think you might have some kind of magic power. You can't see 20 years into the future, but you can predict the next 20 minutes with eerie accuracy. You know exactly which joke will land and which one will start a fight. You understand everyone's hidden triggers. You realize that people will do almost anything to avoid pain, even if that means inflicting it on others. You see everything, feel everything, but you don't have the words to explain it. So you try to diagnose yourself using after-school specials and magazine articles. The only word that seems to fit is crazy. This was BrenA Brown's childhood. She's a researcher who would spend more than 20 years studying the very things that confused her as a kid: our emotions, our relationships, and the words we use to make sense of them. What she discovered is that she wasn't crazy, she wasn't alone. In fact, her superpower was a profound sensitivity to the inner landscape of human experience, a world most of us are never taught to navigate. Atlas of the Heart is the result of that journey. It's not just another feelings book. Think of it as a travel guide, a map to the 87 emotions and experiences that shape what it means to be human. It has sold millions of copies worldwide for one simple reason. It gives us the language we've been missing. Here's my promise to you. By the end of our time together, you'll have a new map for your own heart. You'll understand the subtle but crucial differences between emotions we constantly mix up, like envy and jealousy, or shame and guilt. You'll discover why joy can feel terrifying, and why finding the right words for your experiences doesn't give them more power over you, it gives you power over them. This isn't just a summary, it's a journey into the landscape of your own heart, so you can travel anywhere without fear of getting lost. So where do we begin a journey like this? Let's start with a surprising discovery the author made early in her research. For over 5 years, she and her team asked more than 7,000 people a simple question. Can you list all the emotions you can recognize and name as you're experiencing them? Think about that for a moment. How many could you name right now? The average answer was 3. Happy, sad, and angry. That's it. For thousands of people, the vast, complex, beautiful, and terrifying landscape of human experience was being squeezed through just 3 words. It's like trying to paint a masterpiece with only red, blue, and yellow. You can get the basics, but you miss all the nuance, all the depth, all the shades that make life what it is. What about disappointment, or awe, or anxiety, or gratitude? This discovery became the heart of the book. As philosopher Ludwig Wittgenstein once said, "The limits of my language mean the limits of my world." If our emotional vocabulary is limited to just happy, sad, and angry, we're living in a very small world. When we lack the language to discuss what we're feeling, our ability to understand it, share it with others, and get the help we need becomes severely limited. It's like going to the doctor with terrible, shooting pain in your shoulder, but your mouth is taped shut and your hands are tied. You can't point, you can't explain. All you can do is either collapse in despair or thrash around in rage. That's what happens to us emotionally. We either shut down or act out. The entire purpose of this atlas, this map of the heart, is to give us the language to untie our hands and remove the tape from our mouths. Because naming an experience doesn't give it more power, it gives us the power of understanding and meaning. Let's start our journey in a place we all know, a place we visit when things feel uncertain or just too much. Imagine a packed, noisy restaurant with only one waiter on the floor. That waiter is you. You can't speak, and you're wearing giant swimming fins that make walking, let alone running, impossible. That recurring nightmare is how the author describes the difference between two feelings we often lump together: stress and overwhelm. Being stressed is like being in the weeds. It's that sensation when you have too many tables, too many orders, and you're falling behind. It's tough, but you can still function. You can ask for help. You can catch up. We get in and out of the weeds almost every day. It's a normal part of life. But being overwhelmed is completely different. That's being blown. In restaurant terms, when a waiter is blown, everything stops. The kitchen manager steps in. Your tables immediately get reassigned. You're told to step outside, go to the cooler, do whatever you need for 10 minutes. Because you are completely overcome. You can't think. You can't function. People can offer help, but you don't even have the capacity to explain what you need. Both stress and overwhelm involve believing that environmental demands exceed our ability to cope. The difference is degree. Stress says, "This is a lot, but I can manage." Overwhelm says, "I cannot function." The cure for overwhelm isn't pushing harder. It's engaging in non-doing. Simply stopping. Just like restaurant managers knew, sometimes the only way to get back on your feet is to do nothing at all for a few minutes. But what about that feeling that's more than just being in the weeds? That feeling of escalating loss of control, worst-case scenario thinking, total uncertainty. The author has a perfect and terrifying name for it: the Willy Wonka tunnel scene. Remember that scene from the original movie? The boat ride starts sweet and magical, then enters a dark tunnel. The boat goes faster and faster. Horrible images flash on the walls, and Willy Wonka starts manically reciting that poem. There's no earthly way of knowing which direction we are going. That's anxiety. It's not just stress. It's the thinking part of stress gone wild. It's our mind creating chains of negative thoughts about bad things that might happen in the future. And our inability to tolerate uncertainty fuels it. When we can't stand not knowing what will happen, our mind creates stories, and they're rarely good ones. Our two main coping mechanisms for anxiety are worry and avoidance. Neither works. Worrying doesn't actually prepare us or help us cope, it just strengthens the anxiety. And avoidance, well, as Dr. Harriet Lerner writes, it is not fear that stops you. Rather, the problem is avoidance. Avoidance will make you feel less vulnerable in the short run, but it will never make you less afraid. But here's one of the most powerful discoveries in the entire book. It turns out that anxiety and excitement feel almost identical in the body. That same coming out of your skin feeling, the racing heart, the butterflies. The only difference is how we interpret and label it. When we perceive the feeling negatively, we call it anxiety. When we perceive it positively, we call it excitement. Just by taking a breath and asking ourselves, am I anxious or am I excited, we can sometimes shift our entire experience. That's the power of language. This brings us to one of the most misunderstood and vital emotions of all, the one we experience in times of uncertainty, risk, and emotional exposure. It's the feeling of a first date after a divorce. It's the feeling of waiting for the doctor to call back. It's the feeling of apologizing to someone you hurt. It's vulnerability. For most of us, we were taught that vulnerability equals weakness, but the author's research shows the exact opposite. There is no courage without vulnerability. It is, in her words, our greatest measure of courage. It's showing up and being all in when you can't control the outcome. It's not oversharing, it's sharing with people who have earned the right to hear your story. It's the birthplace of all the good things in our lives: love, belonging, joy, trust, and creativity. But we're so afraid of it. We spend our lives building armor to protect ourselves from feeling vulnerable. One of the most common forms of armor is something the author calls perfectionism. And where perfectionism exists, another emotion is always lurking just beneath the surface. This takes us to a new place on our map, the places we go when we fall short. Here we find 4 emotions that we often use interchangeably, but they're worlds apart: shame, guilt, humiliation, and embarrassment. Understanding the difference is life-changing. Let's use a simple example. You get back a quiz in school, and you got an F. If your self-talk is, "I'm so stupid," that's shame. Shame is the intensely painful feeling of believing we are flawed and therefore unworthy of love and belonging. It's not about our behavior. It's about ourself. I am bad. Shame thrives on secrecy, silence, and judgment. It wants you to believe you're the only one. The antidote to shame is empathy. When we share our story with someone who responds with "me too," shame can't survive. Now, what if your self-talk is different? What if you look at the F and think, "Going to that party instead of studying was a stupid thing to do"? That's guilt. Guilt is about our behavior. I did something bad. Unlike shame, which corrodes our belief that we can change, guilt is actually a driver of positive change. It's the discomfort we feel when our actions don't align with our values, and it motivates us to apologize, make amends, and do better. So shame is, "I am bad." Guilt is, "I did something bad." What about humiliation? Let's go back to the quiz. The student next to you sees your F, grabs your paper, holds it up and yells, "This idiot can't even pass a quiz. He's as stupid as they come." And the class laughs. That feeling is humiliation. It's the feeling of being unjustly degraded or put down by someone else. The key difference between shame and humiliation is that with shame, we often feel we deserve it. With humiliation, we feel it was unfair. We didn't deserve it. This distinction is critical because new research shows a terrifying link between humiliation and violence. Humiliation, not just bullying, is what can lead people to lash out. And finally, there's embarrassment. As you're walking back to your desk with your F, you realize you have a long piece of toilet paper stuck to your shoe. That feeling is embarrassment. It's fleeting. It's about a minor social mistake, and you know it could have happened to anyone. It's uncomfortable, but it's not a deep cut to your self-worth. Shame is the birthplace of perfectionism. Perfectionism isn't about healthy striving. It's a belief system that says, if I look perfect, live perfectly, and do everything perfectly, I can avoid the painful feelings of shame, judgment, and blame. It's not about how can I improve. It's about what will they think. It's a 20-ton shield we think is protecting us, but is actually just weighing us down and keeping us from taking flight. Now let's travel to a different territory, the one we enter when we start looking at the people around us, the places we go when we compare. The author has a great analogy for this. She loves to swim laps. It's her meditation. But the only thing that can ruin a swim is when she stops focusing on the black line at the bottom of her lane and starts paying attention to the person swimming next to her. She starts racing them, comparing their stroke, their speed. That's comparison. She defines it as the crush of conformity from one side and competition from the other. It's the paradox of trying to simultaneously fit in and stand out. It says, be like everyone else, but better. The problem is, social comparison seems to happen automatically. It's almost reflexive. We can't help but notice. But the good news is, we get to choose how we let it affect us. Her new strategy? She acknowledges the person in the next lane, says to herself, have a great swim, and then consciously returns her focus to her own lane, her own journey. Comparison drives all sorts of big feelings. Two that we constantly get wrong are envy and jealousy. Here's the simple difference. Envy occurs when we want something another person has. It involves two people, you and the person who has the thing you want. I'm envious of your new car. Jealousy, on the other hand, is when we fear losing a relationship we already have to a third person. It involves three people, you, your partner, and the rival. It's the fear of being replaced. We often say, I'm so jealous of your vacation, when what we really mean is, I'm so envious. We avoid the word envious because it feels ugly, like it comes with hostility. But just knowing the difference helps us ask ourselves the right questions. Am I afraid of losing someone I have, or do I just want something someone else has? This leads to another feeling born from comparison, resentment. For years, the author thought resentment was a form of anger. She would feel it toward people who weren't working as hard as she was, people who were okay with good enough when she was chasing perfection. Then, in a conversation with another emotions researcher, he told her something that changed her life. He said, resentment isn't part of the anger family. Resentment is part of the envy family. A light bulb went off. She wasn't mad because someone else was resting. She was mad because she was bone-tired and wanted to rest but wouldn't let herself. She wasn't furious that they were okay with imperfection. She was furious because she wanted to be okay with imperfection. Now when she feels resentment, instead of asking what are they doing wrong, she asks herself, what do I need but am afraid to ask for? Resentment is the feeling of frustration and judgment that comes from perceived unfairness, often when we fail to set boundaries or ask for what we need. From the world of comparison, let's move to a place we all visit when things don't go as planned. This is the land of disappointment, expectations, and regret. The author offers the clearest definition of disappointment I've ever heard. Disappointment is unmet expectations. That's it. The more significant the expectation, the more significant the disappointment. The problem is, most of our expectations are stealth expectations. They're unexamined and unexpressed. We paint a beautiful movie in our heads of how something is supposed to go, how people are supposed to act, what they're supposed to say. But we're the only one who has seen the script. When real life doesn't follow our internal movie, we get disappointed, hurt, even angry. She tells a story about her and her husband, Steve. They noticed they argued most after weekends when they were both home trying to juggle all the family activities. It was easier when one of them was away. How could that be? They finally realized it was all about stealth expectations. When they were alone with the kids, they had no expectation of getting their own stuff done. But when they were together, they both had a long list of things they hoped to accomplish, but they never talked about it. They just ended up blaming each other for their own disappointment. Now, before a weekend or vacation, they ask each other a simple question: What do you want this to look like? They reality check their expectations. It's vulnerable to ask for what we need and to talk about our expectations. But, as one of her therapists told her, after she complained that her husband didn't celebrate her birthday the right way, "If you have to ask, it's not worth it," is a myth. The therapist replied, "If you're not asking for what's important to you, maybe it's because you don't think you are worth it." Sometimes we choose to live disappointed, rather than risk feeling disappointment. But the author tells a heartbreaking story of a man in his 60s who used to live by the motto, "Expect the worst." That way he was never disappointed. Then his wife was killed in a car accident. He said, "Needless to say, expecting the worst didn't prepare me at all. And worse, I still grieve for all those wonderful moments we shared that I didn't fully enjoy." What about regret? While disappointment is about an outcome we feel was outside our control, regret is when we believe the outcome was caused by our own actions or our failure to act. The author argues that no regrets is a terrible motto. It doesn't mean living with courage. It means living without reflection. Regret is a powerful teacher. It's a function of empathy. It's a call to courage and a path to wisdom. What we regret most aren't our failures, but our failures of kindness, our failures of courage. Now let's leave these difficult places for a moment and journey to a land that feels almost magical, the places we go when something is beyond us. Here we find awe and wonder. Both of these emotions make us feel small, but in a good way. Small yet connected to something vast and incomprehensible. The primary difference is this: wonder inspires the wish to understand. Awe inspires the wish to just stand back and let it shine. If you see a butterfly land on your finger, you might feel a sense of wonder. You might want to learn all about caterpillars and monarch migrations. It fuels curiosity. But if you're standing on the edge of the Grand Canyon at sunset, you feel awe. You don't want to understand it. You just want to witness it. Awe makes us feel more connected to each other, more generous, and more humble. And speaking of curiosity, the author makes a brilliant distinction between curiosity and interest. Interest is a cognitive openness. I'm interested in that topic. But curiosity is what happens when we recognize a gap in our knowledge about something that interests us, and we become emotionally invested in closing that gap. It's not just thinking, it's feeling. We have to know a little bit about something to become curious about it. You can't be curious about something you know nothing about. This is why, as Albert Einstein said, the important thing is not to stop questioning. Choosing to be curious is choosing to be vulnerable. It requires us to admit we don't know, to ask questions, and to risk making discoveries that might make us uncomfortable. Our journey through the heart has to include the places we go with others. And here we find some of the most important concepts for building a meaningful life: compassion, empathy, sympathy, and boundaries. Let's be very clear about the relationship between compassion and empathy. Compassion is the daily practice of recognizing our shared humanity. Empathy is a skill set, the most powerful tool of compassion. Compassion is not pity. Pity is what the author calls a near enemy. It looks like compassion, but it undermines it. Pity says, "Oh, that poor person." It creates distance. Compassion says, "I understand this pain. I suffer in the same way." It creates connection. Empathy is the skill that allows us to connect. And here we need to bust a huge myth. Empathy is not walking in someone else's shoes. The minute we try to imagine ourselves in their situation, we often fail. We either get sucked into our own feelings, or, because our experience is different, we start to doubt or judge theirs. Instead, Empathy is learning how to listen to the story someone tells about what it's like in their shoes and believing them, even when it doesn't match our experience. It's not about feeling for someone that's sympathy. It's about feeling with them. It doesn't mean you have to have had the exact same experience. It just means you have to connect to the feeling they're describing. If a friend tells you they're heartbroken because their dog died, you don't need to have had a dog die to be empathic. You just need to know what heartbreak feels like. You connect to the emotion, not the specific event. And none of this, not compassion, not empathy, is possible without boundaries. This was a huge, soul-shaking discovery for the author. She couldn't understand why the most compassionate people she interviewed all talked about the importance of boundaries. It finally clicked. You cannot be compassionate when you're feeling resentful and taken advantage of. Boundaries aren't about pushing people away. They're about creating the space where you can connect with them authentically. As writer Prentice Hemphill so beautifully put it, boundaries are the distance at which I can love you and me simultaneously. And in this space of connection, we have to be careful of what the author calls comparative suffering, the idea that my pain is bigger than your pain, or that I'm not allowed to feel my pain because someone else has it worse. Hurt is hurt. Empathy is not a pizza with 8 slices. When you give it to someone, there isn't less to go around, there's more. Our map is becoming fuller. We've journeyed through struggle, comparison, disappointment, and connection. Now let's go to the places that represent the very heart of the heart. Love, heartbreak, and trust. The author's definition of love, born from her research, is profound. She says we cultivate love when we allow our most vulnerable and powerful selves to be deeply seen and known, and when we honor the spiritual connection that grows from that offering with trust, respect, kindness, and affection. Love isn't something we give or get. It's something we nurture and grow. It's a connection. And here's the key. We can only love others as much as we love ourselves. Shame, blame, disrespect, and betrayal damage the roots from which love grows. And when love is lost, we experience heartbreak. Heartbreak is different from disappointment. Disappointment is about unmet expectations. Heartbreak is about the loss of love. It can only come from someone to whom we have given our heart. To love is to risk heartbreak. But as the author concludes, after losing her beloved dog, Daisy, a pain she once thought wouldn't be worth it, the broken-hearted are the bravest among us. They dared to love. So how do we build love? How do we protect our hearts? It comes down to trust. But trust is a huge, vague word. If someone says, "I don't trust you," it feels like an attack on our whole character. So the author broke it down into 7 specific, observable behaviors. She uses the acronym BRAVING. B is for boundaries. You respect my boundaries, and you're willing to say no. R is for reliability. You do what you say you'll do. A is for accountability. You own your mistakes, you apologize, and you make amends. V is for vault. You don't share information that's not yours to share. My confidences are safe with you. I is for integrity. You choose courage over comfort. You practice your values, not just profess them. N is for non-judgment. I can ask for what I need, and you can ask for what you need, without judgment. G is for generosity. You extend the most generous interpretation possible to my intentions, words, and actions. This framework is a game changer. It turns the big, scary concept of trust into a concrete conversation about specific behaviors. It also gives us a powerful tool for self-trust. We can ask ourselves, did I respect my own boundaries? Was I reliable to myself? Did I hold myself accountable? And finally, our journey brings us to the good places. The places we go when life is good. And this is where we find another one of those crucial distinctions, the difference between joy and happiness. Happiness is circumstantial. It's related to our immediate environment. It's feeling pleasure. It's stable and longer lasting. Joy, on the other hand, is something deeper. It's an intense feeling of deep spiritual connection, pleasure, and appreciation. It's often sudden, unexpected, and fleeting. It's what the ancient Greeks called the good mood of the soul. The author tells a beautiful story about being on a paddle boat with her daughter, Ellen, when she was in first grade. She noticed Ellen had stopped pedaling and was sitting perfectly still with her eyes closed and a quiet smile on her face. Worried, she asked if everything was okay. Ellen opened her eyes and said, "I'm fine, Mama. I was just making a picture memory." She explained that when she's really, really happy, she closes her eyes and takes a picture in her mind so she can look at it later when she's feeling sad or scared. That is joy. But here's the catch. Joy is the most vulnerable of all human emotions. Why? Because when we feel that intense joy, we're terrified of it being taken away. This is what the author calls foreboding joy. It's that feeling when you're watching your child sleep and you're filled with so much love and joy that your very next thought is, "Oh my God, what if something happens to them?" We start dress rehearsing tragedy in the best moments of our lives because we're afraid of being blindsided by pain. But when we do that, we squander the very goodness we need to build resilience. So what's the antidote? The research found that everyone who had a deep capacity for joy had one thing in common. They practiced gratitude. When that quiver of vulnerability hits in a moment of joy, instead of letting your mind race to tragedy, you can choose to use it as a reminder to feel gratitude. Instead of, "Oh my God, what if something bad happens?" you can say, "I am so grateful for this perfect moment." Gratitude doesn't just make us happier. It allows us to participate more fully in our lives. As one researcher put it, instead of adapting to goodness, we celebrate goodness. This entire journey through all these different lands of emotion leads the author to a final, unifying theory, a theory on cultivating meaningful connection. It rests on 3 core practices. First, developing grounded confidence. This is about a commitment to learning and improving. It's about knowing the language of emotion, practicing courage, rumbling with vulnerability, and staying curious. Its near enemy is knowing and proving, the need to be right, instead of getting it right. Grounded confidence is captured in the mantra, "I'm here to get it right, not to be right." Second, practicing the courage to walk alongside. This is about being with people in their struggle, not trying to fix them or lead them. It's about being other-focused. Its near enemy is controlling the path. This is when we think we're helping, but we're actually just trying to manage the outcome to soothe our own anxiety. As Anne Lamott said, help is the sunny side of control. And third, practicing story stewardship. This is the culmination of everything. The author realized she was wrong about something she had said for 20 years. She used to believe we could learn to recognize emotion in others. She no longer believes that. There are too many emotions that look the same. We can't know what someone is feeling just by looking at them. So how do we know? We ask. And when they tell us their story, we become stewards of that story. Story stewardship means honoring the sacred nature of a story. We listen, we stay curious, we believe them. Its near enemy is what she calls performing connection. This is where we run into 2 major roadblocks: narrative tap-out and narrative takeover. Narrative tap-out is when we subtly disengage because we're uncomfortable or disinterested. We might say, "I'm sure it was great," and then change the subject. Narrative takeover is even more damaging. This is when we hijack someone's story and make it about ourselves. A colleague tells you they felt invisible in a meeting, and you jump in with, "That's ridiculous. We're going to have a come-to-Jesus meeting right now. No one treats my people like that." You become the savior. You feel great, but the person who shared their story is still sitting there, not fully heard. True story stewardship is about decentering ourselves and centering their experience. It's saying, "Say more. Help me understand what that felt like. What does support look like for you?" This is the ultimate practice of connection. It requires grounded confidence to listen without judgment, and the courage to walk alongside someone in their story without trying to control it. And at the heart of it all is language, the language to ask, the language to listen, and the language to understand. That's the map, that's the atlas. It gives us the words to find our way back to ourselves and to each other. When you step back and look at Atlas of the Heart in its entirety, you realize it's not really a book about emotions. It's a book about freedom. It's about the freedom that comes from understanding. The freedom to navigate your inner world with confidence instead of fear. The freedom to build connections that are real and deep, instead of shallow and performative. For so many of us, our feelings are like a foreign country, where we don't speak the language. We know when we're in pain, but we can't read the signs. We know when we're happy, but we don't know the local customs. We wander around, often feeling lost, misunderstood, and alone. What BrenA Brown has done is hand us a dictionary and a map and said, "You belong here. Let me show you around." The most powerful lesson for me is the idea that precision is liberating. We think talking about our feelings is this messy, vague, sentimental thing. But this book shows us it's the opposite. Being able to distinguish between anguish and grief, between envy and resentment, between shame and guilt, that's not sentimental. That's a high-level skill. It's like a doctor being able to distinguish between a virus and a bacterial infection. The diagnosis determines the treatment. If you think you're feeling shame and you try to fix it, but you're actually feeling guilt, you're using the wrong tool for the job. So how can we start using this atlas in our own lives right now? Here are 3 simple practices you can begin today. First, start with 1. Don't try to memorize all 87 emotions. Just pick one that resonated with you today. Maybe it's the difference between stress and overwhelm. Maybe it's resentment. The next time you feel that familiar knot in your stomach or that surge of anger, just pause and ask yourself, is there a more precise word for this? Instead of, "I'm so mad," you might find yourself thinking, "I'm feeling resentful because I'm exhausted and I'm not asking for the rest I need." That small shift from blame to self-awareness is everything. Second, practice the braving inventory with yourself. Trust isn't just for other people. At the end of each day for a week, take 60 seconds and ask yourself just one of the braving questions. For example, B, for boundaries. Did I respect my own boundaries today? Or G, for generosity. Was I generous with myself today when I made a mistake? Building self-trust is the foundation for trusting others and for building the grounded confidence we talked about. And third, listen for understanding, not to respond. In your next conversation with a friend or family member who is sharing something difficult, make a conscious effort to practice story stewardship. Your only job is to understand their experience as they see it. Resist the urge to give advice, to share your own story, or to fix it. Instead, use phrases like, "Tell me more about that," or "What did that feel like for you?" or simply, "That sounds so hard." You'll be amazed at how much deeper the connection feels when you stop trying to be the hero and just become a trusted steward of their story. That was a summary of Atlas of the Heart by BrenA Brown. We've covered a lot of ground today, from the dark tunnels of anxiety to the sunlit fields of joy. But I have to be honest with you, a summary is like looking at a map of the Grand Canyon. You can see the layout, you can understand the geography, but you can't feel the awe until you're standing on the edge yourself. The real magic of this book is in the quiet moments of reading, when a particular story or a single definition clicks into place in your own life and illuminates something you've felt but never understood. This journey we took today is meant to help you decide if this book is worth your time. If anything we've talked about has sparked a sense of recognition or curiosity in you, I encourage you to get a copy. Reading it isn't just learning, it's an act of coming home to yourself. The link to the book is in the description. Also, if you found this summary valuable and want to continue exploring the world's most transformative ideas, please hit that like button and subscribe to the channel. It lets me know that this work matters and ensures you won't miss our next journey into another life-changing book. Let's keep learning and growing together.